Hi, I'm Rebecca Nackson. I'm the founder of Notable Growth, a growth marketing agency that helps big and small brands alike build and optimize their growth marketing. I did so at audible.com and iHeartRadio, and I've consulted for some years before starting Notable. And the drive for myself and many of us at Notable is to help clients who are facing many obstacles that we ourselves faced while trying to build a cohesive and efficient marketing strategy, but doing so amidst ever-changing advancements in marketing technology. And ever-changing advancements is the perfect segue for what we're talking about today. It's January of 2022, but in many ways, what I'm talking about today is a follow-up to a presentation I delivered in October of 2019. For those of us who are living through the COVID pandemic and the fallout afterwards, October 2019 feels more like a decade ago. But in that address, I had asked if funnel vision is impeding marketers' view of the user journey. And in it, I was discussing something I observed in my years of managing both user acquisition as well as engagement and retention marketing. And what I noticed to be a deep division or a silo that existed between those teams. This has only been further reinforced through consulting, where I see in most cases, small and large enterprises alike, outsourcing the paid media and user acquisition very often to an external agency, and leaving a lot of that information and data completely siloed from the other part of their organization that is responsible with marketing and engaging and retaining users. My thesis, if you will, in that October presentation was that each side of the customer lifecycle owns or develops key information, and that if those two sides are brought together, it would result in a much more complete and therefore accurate picture of a typical and high value customer. It would also include a lot of valuable information about customers who fall short of your achieving desired actions. But we marketers can use those different paths, those different journeys to deploy emails and push notifications using a tool like CleverTap to nudge users along. And if we're able to do so, that's going to drive incremental revenue and create happier customers. So funnel vision, the idea that one marketer's job is to attract new users through awareness and consideration, and a separate, even if related, team's job to then convert and create loyalty. I think it's based on a false sense of direction and order. And this has been further muddled thanks to that visual aid of a funnel where you've got gravity that seems to pull users from one stage to the next. The customer lifecycle, as we now discuss it, turns this on its side. And it forces us to consider that many of our users who might be taking the journey that we want, they're only one step away from possibly falling into churn territory. The optimistic side of this is that those users of ours who might be lapsing, they too are only one or two steps away from desired outcomes. So in support of this thesis, I had ended that presentation with a well-known quote from an otherwise obscure Greek philosopher, but I quoted Heraclitus. He says that no one ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river and they are not the same person. Heraclitus was famous for his insistence on ever-present change. This is known in philosophy as flux. And boy, are we in a state of flux right now. So I know we marketers are all looking for a path forward, but to me, today's flux is an opportunity. It really, to me, only illustrates that the ground we once stood on perhaps was never quite as solid as we perceived it to be, and that the path forward requires an ability to succeed in a constant state of flux. And when I look back to October 2019, but then the months that followed, it's almost comical sometimes to look back at emails that were sent then of thinking this will be our new normal for one more week, one more month, one more year. And, as I pointed out, as we've just started the new year in 2022, we realize that this flux is going to be continuing for a long time. We know that the era that we're finding ourselves in is especially unprecedented, but every generation has their disruption and their unprecedented events. For those of us who have worked in marketing, throughout the switch to digital, that was our unprecedented event. So much of what we experience today might feel disruptive, but I know that some of the younger members at Notable have grown up with using their phones with digital, and many of the advancements that frankly still feel somewhat disruptive and new to me are second nature to them. And this is true in the audience for so many of our products. So for them, this is second nature. This is how they've been experiencing the world, and doing so many of their daily activities on mobile is the only precedent that they have. So one way to look at the previous 2 years is to consider that maybe it wasn't nearly as tumultuous as we initially thought it to be. And by that, I mean, perhaps there was a greater roadmap for determining how we would market. At Notable, we certainly found this to be the case for clients of ours whose growth efforts rested upon a solid foundation of tooling and teaming. What I mean by this is tooling, real-time analytics that allows for an agile messaging strategy. So when the shutdown happened, we were able to identify shifts in user behavior and make changes to messaging in real time. So for example, one fast food chain that we work with, we help them identify segments of users who were using their app in order to order ahead. And for those users, we could provide them messaging that included important information about how stores were adding additional cautionary measures, but we could also highlight enhancements to curbside pickup. And this was done in parallel to outreach to other loyal customers who had not yet used the order ahead features. And we could market these aspects of the product in light of the current circumstances. And then finally, we could also silence marketing efforts to particular segments where we found that to be most prudent, but not do so at the expense of larger pockets within their audience where activity was healthy, in some cases even bigger than ever before. A similar phenomenon was felt by retail clients who noticed an uptick in purchases, presumably by segments of their audience who had additional time and resources to spend on items while they found themselves homebound, and possibly having additional money in their budget based on decreases in spending habits elsewhere. As somebody who lives in New York City, I very much found myself in that category, not going out to eat, not meeting up with friends. Broadway had shut down in the city, and I'm now working in a home office, which requires some new purchases to support that. And then also just spending more time in my apartment in general and wanting to make that a more comfortable place. So by leveraging tooling, but also the teaming comes in really needing a good understanding of how to use these tools, how to unearth insights, how to find these segments, and then how to deploy messaging accordingly. That was the combination that allowed our clients to act quickly when so many businesses around them felt ill-equipped to establish a new normal. And in a lot of conversations with new potential clients around that time, what we found was there was a real fear in sending marketing communications in absence of this intelligence. We certainly don't want to sound tone deaf or insensitive. And so for businesses that were not equipped with this view of their users with real-time insights into how and where customers are using their products, their safest option was to shut down something entirely. And in doing that, they were losing out on some opportunities. Those brands who had this foundation felt much more comfortable and confident adjusting their strategy, but continuing business and being able to capitalize on whatever opportunities were arising. Tooling today makes it easier than ever to comb through small to large data sets in real time. Now, time is so much at a premium, and historical data is potentially less accurate in helping forecast success. So in order to take that first step forward, you need some leading indicators from a really recent data set of what success looks like. I've read a great article by Rahul Vora. He's the founder and CEO of Superhuman, but he says that he himself was able to measure product market fit when he was building Superhuman using an audience of less than 200 users. His hypothesis was that if he could measure product market fit, he could then optimize it and create a very systematic approach to increasing product market fit. And I find this to be a really pragmatic and useful approach because this was very early in the journey of him building a product. And so he was surveying those users of him who had experienced core value from the product at least twice within the last 2 weeks. He found that to be the right balance of recency and also how deep into the product they had gone. If we can look at users who have experienced value within the last 2 weeks in order to find a leading indicator, then that's a great first step. And we only further develop that as time goes on. Certainly, some external events are bigger than others, and at least for now, a global pandemic must certainly rate close to the top. So, the question that we're facing right now is, what do you do when everything around you is changing? And you need to decide how much of the path you've been taking is still valid, or if it's time to move in a different direction. And like any journey, it's done with one step at a time. Within 48 hours of the shutdown, you could start to find early clues as to how your audience was responding. And this data set continues to grow over the course of the week, giving you more than enough of an initial indicator for weeks that follow. I would caution against this idea of a new normal. I've been arguing that there probably never was an old normal. I think what we advocate and what we have the ability to do better than we ever had before is to embrace this flux and convert to an agile strategy, to do so with one that still is systematic or formulaic in structure. And if I connect that back to the fast food example before, what that means is always you have a welcome series. You have an activation series. These are constants, and this is a view of your customer experience that can stay pretty consistent. But like the tests that you ran in high school science class, you can start to isolate one variable at a time. And so in that example that I gave before, if you're messaging as existing users, what might change now is the time that passes from one message to another to reflect the real activity and the usage window of your customers. Or the segmentation might shift so that you're placing an increased focus on curbside delivery versus in-store pickup, since right after the shutdown, in-store dining was not a thing. The actual data or user information that you're including in the messaging might change. And you have the ability to do something like that if you're using a messaging tool like CleverTap that can allow you to create templates for your emails, but populate it with data that reflects the actual patterns and behavior of your users. Maybe you include what items they purchased last, or you trigger that message based on the fact that they have or have not tried curbside pickup, so that the larger structure of your marketing stays the same. And instead, you're able to optimize and test different aspects and do so within the current context. We at Notable helped our clients find initial clues as to how their audiences were responding, and we recommend this approach to anyone looking for early indicators. So we work with clients to develop lifecycle marketing that takes into account the experience of every user who has come before them, not only through product improvements, but also using accompanying marketing messages to provide essential context and counsel developed based on previous customers who have achieved success and embodied similar behavior and characteristics. And I'll be including more information on how we've done this, including frameworks to help you answer some of these very urgent questions quickly and confidently on Notable's website. Before ending, I'd like to thank you for your time and attention today. If you'd like more information, including today's slides, as well as some of the frameworks that we've used with clients referenced in this presentation, I'll be including those on a notes section of our website. You can find that at www.notablegrowth.com/notes. I wish great things for you in 2022, and no matter what bumps await you, I hope you'll enjoy the ride. Thanks.